Welcome, in front of me I have a Samsung Galaxy A34, and today I'll go over unboxing along with a quick overview of this phone. So jumping straight into it, let's just cut into it. Now right at the top we got some paperwork, if it would actually, there we go, want to fall out. Oh, and a charging cable. So it's a Type-C to Type-C with, well, as you probably expect, no charger provided. So hopefully you already have one. And obviously below here we have our phone, and that's, well, literally it. There's nothing more in the box. So let's just get to the device. There's our device. Now it has a little bit of like a color shift to it, but just a subtle amount. Anyway, let's just turn it on and get a look at our device. So right here, the display, that's a Super AMOLED display, 120 Hz refresh rate, 6.6 inches with a resolution of 1080 by 2340, which puts it at 390 pixels per inch and 84, almost 85% screen to body ratio. Now with the 85%, on the paper it seems nice, but as you can see, these bezels aren't necessarily the smallest things you have seen, especially in a phone released in 2023. It's just a little nitpick right here, but if you're looking for aesthetics on a phone, obviously that's going to be one of the biggest ones, the bezels on a phone, and these are not the smallest one. Now, I'm not going to go through the setup. It's Samsung, so there is a lot of annoyance, so I'm just going to touch upon everything else without setting up. I'm pretty sure we all know how Samsung UI looks like. The One UI, it hasn't changed at all. So yeah, anyway, let's flip it over, and here we have a triple camera setup. So the main sensor is a 48 megapixel wide sensor with f1.8. Then we got a 8 megapixel f2.2 ultra wide and 5 megapixel f2.4 macro. Now, I'll say that these cameras I have no problem. Usually Samsung and a lot of other companies include a 2 megapixel macro, and at that point that's an absolute garbage camera. But at 5 megapixel it will actually rival and probably capture still better photos than the 48 megapixel sensor. So no problems here with the cameras that they provided. Obviously they won't compete with their higher end models like the S23s, any of them, but still these cameras should be sufficient enough. Now, talking about a couple additional things, we got just the volume rockers and the power button on the side. At the top we have our SIM / looks like SD tray. Let me just make sure about that one, because that would be surprising from Samsung. Yes, I just yeeted it onto the ground. Great. Hopefully I won't run over it with the chair. There we go, found it. So, we do have expandable storage using SD card. It doubles as a SIM tray as well, so you could just place a SIM card sideways here if you wanted to. But anyway, just pop that back in. At the bottom, we have our speaker, charging port, microphones, and that's about it. And on our left side, literally nothing. So, we should have a fingerprint sensor under the display. Yep, it's under the display, so it's a typical thing. And now let's go into these specs. Probably one of the things that a lot of people will care about. So before I start talking about any of these specs, I'm going to quickly mention the price, just so you are aware what you get for it. So this device comes at about $300 US. For some reason we have about 400 pounds, so it's a little bit more expensive, but okay. So I don't know, anywhere between, let's just give an average of about 350 bucks. Most likely you will see different variants of like how much it costs depending on how which version you go for, and also when you buy it and from what store, so keep that in mind. So the 353 to almost 400, that's just like a, let's just call it in between. It could be anywhere between that. Anyway, so inside, this device is being powered by a Dimensity 1080. And if you're wondering what the processor is, how good it is, the best I can compare it to, it is something like a Snapdragon 865, which is a relatively old processor. This chip is a little bit, well, newer. This is not a flagship chip in here, but the reason I'm just giving you kind of like a comparison right here, 865 was a old flagship processor, but it basically compares to it. I think it's like a, I don't know, 4-year-old, maybe even more than 4-year-old chip. The difference here is with the Dimensity 1080, you basically get high refresh rates. So refresh rates of the display, or the capability of driving refresh rates, is based on a chip. So this one is able to drive 120 Hz, I believe, max. And that's basically what we have, 120 Hz display Super AMOLED here. Now, we also have a couple versions in terms of storage and RAM. At the very base end of it, you can get 128 gigs of storage and 6 gigs of RAM. That's the minimum. Now, at the highest end, 256 storage with 8 gigs of RAM. As you can see, not much variation right here, just a little bit more storage and a little bit more RAM. And in both cases, I believe you should be just fine enough with any of these choices, either the lowest end, like 128 with 6 gigs, or the higher one. It's completely up to you which one you prefer. And obviously, if you need more than 128 gigs of storage, you can just pop in an SD card and extend it or expand it using that instead. 6 gigs of RAM, I think it's sufficient enough for majority of the tasks you will throw at this device. And the limiting factor here will most likely just be the processor rather than the RAM. Now, going on, battery in here. This is a relatively thin device compared to some other Samsungs. We have a pretty big battery, 5000 milliamps, and just to tell you the thickness of it, I do get it, this little tool right here. I'll be using millimeters, so bear with me. So we're looking at, what is it? 8.5 millimeters. You can kind of see it right here. So pretty thin device for all intents and purposes. Obviously not the thinnest, and I didn't also count in the camera. With the cameras, we'll be looking probably over a centimeter thickness. Exactly 1 centimeter. So yeah. So there we go. Now, I will also mention for a device at a mid-range, it's missing a headphone jack, if anybody cares. I just want to point that out. And that's about all the worth mentioning things about this device. So there we go. That's the brand new Galaxy A34 5G. And yeah, so if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.